But yes, from a community's perspective, we just want to see the needs met. How they're met really is up to council of trying to find that most effective way. And as community groups as well, we believe that we have a part to try and play in that. But buying land at, say, the waterfront at market rates, would be quite challenging.
So just to follow up with another question, in relation to the ferry service, what's your group's feelings in relation to how that's operating at the moment?
It is a superb service.
It's probably a bit of a stretch, Councillor, but I'll let you have that question, but it's not exactly on point.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Go, Gavin.
So it's a superb service, except that it's not frequent enough. So today is a common example. I was frustrated driving in on the motorway today that I couldn't take the ferry. The reason is I can't get back home. So it only operates at the beginning of the morning twice. It only operates at the end of the day twice. It does create community for the times that it's available, but it challenges community because it's not available on the weekends. And we are also challenged because there's not room for sufficient car parking in our community, which means that we want to use public transport. But as my personal family tried, we actually tried for a while to see if we could just do it alone, and we couldn't pull it off. So it's a great service if it could be more frequent, and I know that's the view of the community, is the frequency is a huge challenge for us.
All right, Gavin, thank you very much. That was a very clear
Thank you for your time.
Outline of your community's views, and it's appreciated. Thank you. We thank Gavin Gunston for his input. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Walker. Oh, sorry, Councillor Watson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And Penny, over to you. Welcome.
Thanks. Councillors, please be reminded of the report back of the Social Services Select Committee excuse me, to petition 2011-64 of myself. The Social Services Committee has considered petition 2011-64 of Penelope Mary Bright, requesting that Parliament decline to proceed with the Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Bill until the lawfulness of the reliance of Auckland Council on the New Zealand Department of Statistics high population growth projections instead of their medium population growth projections for the Auckland Spatial Plan has been properly and independently investigated, taking into consideration that both Auckland Transport and Watercare Services Limited have relied upon medium population growth projections for their infrastructural asset management plans. They said, the Auckland Council's now former Chief Planning Officer has said that while Auckland may not grow by 1 million people by 2041, the high growth projection, Auckland Council is preparing for it. The Mayor of Auckland has also said using the high growth projection was the appropriate thing to do and that Council should not be too conservative in their assumptions about population growth. We consider that the response to this issue provided by the Council appears reasonable and therefore have no matters to bring to the attention of the House. And I'll remind you of what I said to the Select Committee in a telephone conference. I don't care if you think it's reasonable. My petition asked whether or not it was lawful. And what is the point of you MPs making the law if you don't follow it yourself? And the particular piece of law, quote, the spatial plan must provide an evidential base to support decision-making in Auckland, including evidence of trends, opportunities and constraints within Auckland. That was back in 2013. Now, what concerns me is that this projection of an extra 300,000 people coming to Auckland, which was basically magicked out of the sky by the Mayor and the then Chief Planning Officer, has been used to drive the special housing areas, because, oh my God, where are we going to put all these people, imaginary people? And so that is what has been a driver for the special housing area. And so what that's done, particularly in areas like Tamaki, has been the excuse to help force state tenants off that prime real estate in Tamaki, where developers have been licking their slobbering chops for years. And what we have seen is that that's also acted as a spur to help get rid of Housing New Zealand. Please be reminded that back in 2014, the National Party in their 2014 election policy said nothing about the plan to privatise state housing through social housing. I have a copy of their policy. You look under housing, it says nothing about this. Then under social, they make oblique references to social housing, but they do not, in a clear, transparent and unequivocal way, say the National Party wants to privatise state housing and replace it with social housing. If you remember, Prime Minister John Key said after the Genesis partial privatisation of electricity, there would be no more asset sales. Hello. I think you'll find that state housing is the biggest state asset of the lot. Now, when you combine this with this ghost city of over 22,000 empty private sector houses, and as I understand, over 500 empty state houses, where is this housing crisis? I put it to you that the so-called Auckland housing crisis is a sham, it is a scam, it is based on a big bubble because it is not evidentially based. Who is profiting from this big bubble? I put it to you that it is property developers, investors, speculators, land bankers and financial institutions. Banks doing very well out of this. There has been no cost-benefit analysis for this move to privatise state housing. First of all, Bill English wanted to go down the path that was used for care for the elderly. It got devolved to the churches and now is in the hands of multinational companies. The Salvation Army didn't want social housing. They'd had a look at it and decided no. So now we seem to have jumped straight in to now financial institutions, overseas social housing providers, people who want to make a profit out of state housing. No cost-benefit analysis, no electoral mandate. The other thing that really concerns me is how much is this bogus Auckland housing crisis sham scam being used for money laundering. And what I have done on that, I discovered, as you sometimes do on Google, that Police National Headquarters had come up with this best practice guidelines for helping to fight money laundering. And there was a specific section related to real estate. But what is the status of a best practice guideline? Do the real estate agents, have they seen it? If it's not mandatory, how is it enforced? So I rang Police National Headquarters and I have been contacted by Detective Inspector Stuart Mills, who plays a very high role, and he's quite happy to talk about it, and he will get back to me on this because, in my considered opinion, as a proven anti-corruption campaigner, I think this whole Auckland bogus, sham, scam housing crisis reeks with corrupt conflicts of interest, and I believe it is time for another inquiry into this Auckland housing crisis.
Thank you, Penny. There may be a couple of questions. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Councillor Wood?
Not.
Well, I just want to know, have you got any evidence, Penny? You've come along here this morning, you've made all these wide sweeping accusations, but what's your evidence?
My evidence, I think the pivotal piece of evidence was the letter from the Department of Statistics that recommended medium population growth projections for Auckland. That's the key piece of evidence. That evidence has been provided was provided to the Social Services Select Committee. It's up there on the parliamentary website, and I'm quite happy to give you the link so you can read it for yourself. In my customary unpaid way, I put a considerable amount of time and effort into researching over 20 pages of key pieces of evidence for this Parliamentary Select Committee. If you choose to read it, George, it's there for you to see.
Thank you. There you go, George. Other questions?
not the evidence,
Councillor Watson.
Just a quick one, Penny.
Think
In
it
terms of the ghost town of 22,000 homes that aren't being used, is there any evidence or anything coming through that sort of indicates what sort of ownership breakup is of those homes in terms of investors or overseas investors? Is there anything that you're aware of there?
Not exactly at this stage. I mean, again, I come back to one of the key things I've discovered as an anti-corruption campaigner is that I believe that if the Public Records Act 2005 was implemented and enforced in a proper way, that would transform this country, because you can't have proper transparency and accountability without proper written records, and I believe there should be proper records. It should be tightened up in terms of, well, who does actually own these properties, and that's pivotal. You must have evidence-based investigation, and that's what I believe we need. But I look forward to having a discussion with Detective Inspector Stuart Mills and raising some of these issues, but I believe that's a really critical one. We do need that information, we do need those facts, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Casey.
Penny, the last time you came before us, you talked about the ghost city of 22,000 houses, and as I recall, I think we were going to do some investigation. The Chief Executive was at that meeting. Could I just check through Mr Quinn how that's going?
That's right, I don't have an update on that. I'd have to go and check.
Or maybe through the chair. How is that coming back to us?
See, I'm not sure. I remember the discussion, and it was certainly raised by Ms Bright and others. I don't know if we've got the ability to check whether people are living in their houses or not, Councillor Casey. So we just need to work out the practicality, and B, the privacy rules around whether we can, double check, are you living in your house? Are you renting your house out? Is your house absent because you're away for 3 months, or are you in between renters? I seem to remember the discussion as it was this is a very hard and possibly expensive and challenging piece of work for council to do. So we'll get an answer on whether it's doable or not. And Jim
Well,
will
it
follow
seems
up.
that if council and central government managed to come up with this strange hybrid, the Tamaki Redevelopment Company, which is a first of its type joint entity between local and central government, I'm sure there could be cooperation between Auckland Council and central government in working out how do we find out details of this ghost city of over 22,000 empty houses, while you walk down Quay Street and you walk over people who are sleeping on cardboard in the most livable city in the world. Yeah.
Point taken. I guess, part of this is if there are empty emergency houses and empty state houses, that's probably an issue that is more straightforward to grapple with. Empty privately owned houses is a very thorny one, Penny.
But the issue there, Deputy Mayor, is whether or not these houses are empty because they are being used for money laundering, they're being used for capital gain. That, to me, is a pivotal issue, and it needs investigating, in my view.
Okay. No, we hear that. All right, no other questions. Penny, thank you, as always. Some challenging questions raised. I'll move that we thank Ms Bright for her public input. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Casey. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.